and you give him a more comfortable matchup, which is weird because he just blind picked Cassio and actually did quite well with it.
I think probably for CosQ, depending on what's locked in. Like if you're leaving Vlad open, which you're not at this point because it has just been banned, then I think you don't really require the counter pick because there's a couple of things you can already kind of set up to pick for, but we are going for the same bans so far at least.
Yeah, except Vlad was banned by Forge, so they now need to add in a new third ban. Epsilon, they got rid of Bard, Rise, and Trundle. So, more options. I feel like the Bard and the Rise may be first pick worthy if he was good enough. Like, if he's Mickey levels from LCS of mechanics, that could work. We'll never find out because it's banned.
It is. Again, as we said, Hiva has not played it yet, so obviously the teams either scrimming or in alternative tournaments have seen Hiva playing that Bard. There's a change up in the picks and bans. Swain being banned away. Vladimir is one of the matchups that tends to do well in him against him, so...
What else does Swain get picked into? Because is that also not a preemptive counter that opens up an opportunity for Forge?
Challenger, we've just seen a lot of Swain, I'm going to be honest. We've also seen it in a couple of different places, not from these teams, but we have seen it in the top lane as well, from Wicked and the Nerve squad.
How did that go?
Didn't go so well. Didn't go
I mean, it was
so
loaded.
well.
They're also at 1 win, 5 losses, so I had a pretty good chance.
Could have been like, it was the one win they had, Trevor, and it worked out amazingly.
I would have had to have checked my stats and be like, no, no. 5-2 and 5. Actually, not a terrible performance.
No,
but that is an aside.
A lot of them were picked up at the end of the game.
Okay.
You know, when you just get constellation kills. But
stress.
We've got a weird pick and ban priority here in this series.
Why? 2 games in a row. Do we have another first pick Shen?
Because it's so forgiving on the side lanes. Typically, you can just very easily play it. You have 2 globals. So now that we've got a lot of mid laners that aren't running teleport, if you don't have a Rek'Sai, you don't actually have access to that third lane. That's one of the main reasons why Shen always kind of comes back in peaks and troughs. Now that people have started to figure out a little bit more of how he's used after the rework, what he's good into, what he's not so good into, we're starting to see him more solidly picked. And the fact that Trundle is not against him, Irelia is not against him, Olaf, these picks that can just kind of run through him, that is what makes him viable. Yeah,
heavy top lane focus again, in terms of the bans. Another very early rotation on Elise, this time Elise Karma. So Noxiac will be playing the same champion they did in the previous game, as will Taiki. No,
Kyrie.
swapped it around, sorry.
At this point,
That's inverse, sorry. They've swapped it around, so Kyrie's stealing that away from Taiki.
Yes.
And nothing really revealed. Those 2 champions fit into any comp.
Yeah, exactly. They fit into any comp, but I'm a little surprised because I would have liked to have seen the Rek'Sai come out. Because I thought it was decent for Kyrie, and now you're kind of giving away Rek'Sai Submarine. You're not giving away Rek'Sai, you're giving Elise. Wow. Okay, Elise.
Evelyn.
Yeah, Evelyn. Sorry.
I got you, homie. I got you,
got
homie.
me. It's all good. I'm thrown by it just from the fact that it's not the pick, but I like seeing different things.
Trace from Gen A is playing Malzahar. He's doing it again. There's a rumble on LCK. We have Evelyn and Challenger. I hope it doesn't suck, because I find Evelyn quite interesting. The invisible mechanics, the engages from the side, Agony's Embrace, the potentials there, especially with the invisible ninja delivery system.
Evelyn Shen was an old LCK favorite. So same with Twitch. I think the more exciting thing for me is that Hiva's playing Alistar, which normally means Forge just go, okay, we're just going to go for you like the entire time and always go aggressive. So we'll see where these team fights end up, but Forge are relying on the flank and the engages coming out from Hiva as well.
And I'm not seeing the strongest front line here. Like, yes, Alistar's great. Shen wants to be coming in late. Evelyn wants to come in from the sides. So whoever Forge are building around might be in a little bit of trouble. Take a look at the backline here for Caitlyn, as well as No on the front line for Epsilon.
That's slightly deceptive because there's a lot of hidden tankiness that ends up being on the Evelyn, because basically the Alistar goes in, then puts his damage reduction on as well, and then Evelyn comes in already with a Shen shield on her, because that's how she appears into the fight, then uses Agony's Embrace and gets another burst of shield. So you actually end up with like an extra 1,500 extra health on top of it. So, we have seen a couple of games. Skarner's not getting locked in
No,
while Elise
I was
is
getting
there.
excited
We've
about
seen
Kennen.
Skarner over in LPL. There's a lot of things to be excited about in this pick and ban phase.
And last second switch. Okay, so long range is the name of the game here with Jhin and with Syndra. A lot of single target damage. If anybody's caught by any of the CC on the side of Epsilon, they're in trouble. But Epsilon, Repel, Knights Caliber Net, Hop, Inspire from Noxiex Karma. There's a lot of tools there to counter as well.
So, we have seen a couple of games. Some of these champions have been cropping back up. Syndra last week for Ica. We got the word that he's been playing it a lot in solo queue. So, Taiki playing the Eve. We've seen it recently over in NA LCS. It's Shrimp that has been playing that. A couple of games. So, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I've not personally cast an Eve in a while.
I haven't in a long time.
What is the build order? What is the primary
It's
focus?
still pretty much AP. You,
Okay.
you go
Runic Echoes?
then you get a Rallies, you get a bunch of stuff on top of it.
So similar to kind of like a Elise build in many ways.
Exactly. You kind of go that off-tankish, where you have both sides of the coin.
Right, Stress. You can now see both team compositions.
Yes, I can.
Tell me what they mean.
Well, we've got Forge with the, you either get the Syndra stun or the Alistair to go in and look to get the flank plays off. Again, not running a TP mid laner, so this is a little bit more focused on bringing Shen into the fights and maybe having side lane control, but against the Gnar, you're not going to get that because Gnar and Mini Gnar is going to be able to just bully out Shen. For Epsilon, a lot of it is about the counter engage. So once the Evelynn and the Shen come in, once the Alistair is in, you've got the Gnar, you've got the Azir to disengage to keep Woolite safe in the backline as well.
All right, well, it's going to be on that Caitlyn. Going to be a lot of pressure on him to stay alive and actually make that work. And to pick up the first series win here for Epsilon. You guys at home, if you see any awesome plays, especially from this Evelynn, jump onto Twitter. Don't forget to vote. Use that hashtag CSBigPlays. Challenger Series Big Plays. And let's hope this Evelynn doesn't suck, because I like it when more exciting champions are brought in. See, now I like Shen. I initially think Shen's like, his play pattern is a little dull.
Okay.
Because it's like, well, wait till someone's low, press R, press E, hope for the best. But now, with you've got an invisible delivery system, the submarine, it would only have been better if there was an Orianna, because then you can do an invisible delivery shockwave taunt. That would have been incredible. Right, I'm getting a death stares here from Stress. You guys jump on Twitter while you're there. No plays have happened yet, so before those happen, vote for who you think will win. Hashtag 4GWin. They've got great reception. Or hashtag EPS win. If you think Epsilon will triple the number of wins they had coming into the day.
The maths checks out.
Yep. They had one. They might have three.
They might have
Two.
three.
If they lose this, they only have two.
Yeah, exactly. That's how maths works. Then we'll take a look at the standings and we'll be like, ooh, that's how it all
I can see Pulse and
sorts
Sifa.
out.
I can see Pulse and Sifa at home saying, "What are you doing to my show?" Quick shot.
It's like, you're ruining our segments.
There was a quality bar that is being tanked. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm not really sorry.
No, sorry, not sorry at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
It definitely would be a small one if there was a sorry on that.
I can dig that. What do you think of Woolite's Caitlyn?
What do I think of Woolite's Caitlyn? Without looking at the stats or with? Because I feel like he's got caught out a little bit too much.
That's really what I want to know.
Yeah. It's the kind of pick that he should be good on, because it's that longer range, kind of scaling later into the game. We always know Woolite has been good on the scaling champions. Historically, always played the likes of the Tristana, that sort of thing. He's had some good games on it, but some of the games I'm left a little bit disappointed.
So I have not watched Challenger as closely as I did last year, and Woolite was a guy who was improving. He was getting caught out less. Last week, watching a few games in anticipation for this week, Woolite gets caught out. Do you think those are just odd games? Or do you think it is still just a weakness in the player that at times he's overstepping the mark?
I mean, like, we've got to think back to his days on Roccat and compare that, because that was where that really was the biggest problem for Woolite as a player.
Yep.
It was like every single game. And I think the fair point to Woolite when we were talking about coming into this week's games is we hadn't seen that kind of Woolite for 2 splits. Pulse and I were like, yeah, he crushes Challenger Series bot laners, doesn't get picked off, just deals with team fights very effectively as well. But last week was a bit weird, but I think we saw in game 1, there was less of it again.
Yeah.
There was a couple of fights where, okay, he got picked off, for, in the middle of the fight, but that's not quite the same as how it had been previously. So I think he has significantly improved on that aspect over the last 2 splits in challenges.
Got it. Just for you guys to know, there's a quick update. There are some connection-related issues with the players in-game. So while the technical guys are busy talking to the players to try to get them resolved, we're going to just talk a little bit more about this matchup. And I want to step back and then look at Epsilon as a whole. If Woolite's not doing all that terrible, how did Epsilon come into the week at 1 win and 5 losses? Is it a multitude of problems that's costing them these games? Different in every game?
It's frustrating because Epsilon is the old Inspire eSports lineup that when we look at last split from Challenger, we're looking very solid. And, we were saying, man, this is a team that actually is kind of coming out of nowhere, that is able to build upon. But it looks like they kind of got lost in the shuffle.
Okay.
When it came to how to play the map in the early game, their lane swap wasn't particularly great in the first few weeks as well. And against the likes of Misfits, Huma, and Millennium, who just kind of as a team were stronger, or at least their solo lanes were like crushing and they were able to take over, Epsilon kind of got left behind.
And do you think a lot of that has to do with the meta shift, with the adjustment in play style, that some of these newer teams that have been formed more recently maybe playing in the newer standard or the newer meta, whereas these guys, they have this history, this older mindset or older viewpoint in the game?
I think that's a really interesting question to look at, and there are issues for Epsilon. For instance, typically Woolite has been good in a 2v2 setting in the bottom lane, but with the advent of Dragon, we've had these different lane swaps that come out that sometimes we end up in a 2 versus 2 top lane, or we end up in tower push into standard lanes in the bottom lane. So there have been times that it should have favored Woolite, but like in the last game, we just saw Epsilon get kind of caught and they lose the second tower because they take a Dragon for it, and the tower trades don't always end up in their favor, or at least even for them.
I thought it was very interesting that Forge opted to go standard lanes for like 2 minutes and then peeled away and then continued the lane swap. It was a bit strange. But it started just this a snowball of events that eventually led to Epsilon winning. I believe we have a replay of the last Baron fight. Just to bring up, I think this was a pretty one-sided affair, but Epsilon, they just played the bait game, in my opinion, pretty well.
Yeah, they played it a lot better here. Noxiac knows that he's got enough to just survive through this. The Baron's already dead because of how fast Cosq and Woolite can do. Again, it's Hiva that's the target of the arrow, but that doesn't matter at that point. All they need to do is pick one off. Kyrie flashes himself back out. There's a moment, perhaps, where if Iker or Gap had a little more damage to come out there, they could have taken down the carries, but still, they've already been taken out fast enough.
Alternatively, a little bit more CC. Because again, that Poppy just did not help the cause. If there had been, okay, I know Trundle was banned, but if there had been a Trundle pillar to slow people down, keep the Chaos Storm on, and I'm going back to the Maokai, but he was up and he was available. There's a couple of different options that I feel could have done better. And maybe that's just why this Poppy is also starting to fall off just a little bit. Prom for disengage, Victor in some ways for disengage too. The team composition had some questions, I feel.
Yes, it did. And honestly, if I'm not mistaken, Na was available in that setup as well.
The Baron Wall.
Which, yes, it's a little less reliable, but still is an option to hold Shen and hold on as the Twilight Zone has entered.
No, it's
European
those coins from Krakow.
Oh yeah,
If you haven't seen the video, that's what it is. LCS is going there. That's where these teams want to end up. But it's going to be a tough road because
you can hear the game.
Both Forge and Epsilon in the battle to avoid not making playoffs? No, that's not really a word.
The battle to avoid missing out on playoffs.
There we go.
I got you.
Thank you. I forgot a word.
I got you this time.
I forgot a word. It's
going to be real.
It's going to be real interesting when we get to Game 6. I cannot wait. For those of you who have stuck with us, thank you. For those who have made you joined, Epsilon took Game 1 in the series. Forge are playing an Evelynn, Syndra, Jhin composition. I did not stutter nor misspeak. That is correct. So, observers, if we can keep an eye on Taiki, thank you for highlighting him. Let's see the pathing, and let's see what sort of impact he can have.
Yes, because I'm skeptical. I generally am skeptical of an Evelyn, but
the you meant just in general life.
Yeah. No, I am also generally skeptical as well. I think you've known me long enough for that one, Trevor. But, you know, we've seen some Evelyns just kind of go off, and you end up like 11 and 3. I think that was like ClearLove's last scoreline the last time we saw him on it. That was a little while back, but, you know, sometimes you'll see that kind of setup, but sometimes you'll see the 0-8 Evelyn, where they may as well have been invisible the entire game.
You mean the Evelyns that are always on your team?
Yes. Although I think that's slightly unfair because I tend not to play with ClearLove too often. So I think it's a bias sample.
Okay. I quite like that. Noxiac again with a little bit of a cheeky invade. Let's see if we can actually steal. Sartorius, though, he gets rooted and placed by the deadly flourish. Forced to flash. Heaver traded his flash and ignite. Blue buff was picked up by Taiki.
Just
okay.
got it. Look at this damage, though, the Noxiac's putting down.
Kind of expect that in a Karma. Those mantra Qs really infuriating at this level. All right, so Summoner spells blown between support and top laners. Sartorius is channeling his TP to the top outer turrets, if I'm looking at that correctly. And it looks like Mimic's going to walk his way in. So tiny, tiny advantage if Mimic wanted to TP in for any sort of skirmish.
This is one of the things we started to see, is if you get punished in the 1 versus 2 situation, or if you get punished in the jungle, you just TP away and get yourself into the tower push fast. You say tiny, it's actually going to end up being significant because it wasn't pushed too fast for Forge. And if you can see the tower health from Epsilon's push already, they already have it way below a quarter before Forge have even got it under 3/4. So big tempo advantage. Gap and Heaver are going to be behind when it comes to the push.
And I think that's very important for Epsilon. If they can get a control of the map with their composition to maybe mitigate some of the strengths that Syndra and Shen and Jin will have in the early to mid game, that's going to allow Azir and Caitlyn just to farm their way up to their 2-3 item spike much easier.
Yeah, look at this. Woolite already has the Cull already backing away. Gap just cancelled his recall because they needed extra pushing power.
Yeah, look at that mini-map.
Kyra coming mid, though. He got spotted on a ward. Forge is so far behind. And what this has given Sartorius the option to do is actually push this all the way through. He's going to take 2 tower shots, which he wasn't intending on doing at that point. Wanted to just push the wave through, but what he did was he pulled the enemy minion line away from his so that it pulled the minions into the tower and made sure that's going to bounce away. And that is going to punish fairly hard on the next attempted push.
So Forge are behind in the tempo. They finally got the tower down, but Gap and Heaver are so far behind where they should be at this point in the lane swap. Mimic could get hurt very, very heavily if he isn't able to find a way into this game, because Sartorius, as you mentioned, Stress, bounced that wave. So that'll allow the CS to push in towards him. Catch that nice and simply.
And what this now does is punishes Mimic on the way forward in the lane. As Mimic on the next wave is going to come through, we have had a pause, so we do have to come back out of the game for just a moment. But Mimic is going to get dragged forward in his lane. Now the wave ended up in Standard Lane's bottom side, Mimic is going to be, without a tower, pushed up against an Elise.
Yeah,
I wonder if you can predict what's going to come in the next couple of minutes.
The one thing that is in Forge's favor is, yes, Mimic is going to be an easy target, and there's going to be potential gank here, especially with Sartorius' Gnar, with Kyrie's Elise. But if Taiki's in the right place at the right time, they could turn that around.
Yes.
Shadow Dash into a couple of hate spikes. There's a lot of damage to come down before either Elise or Gnar get Mega Gnar or tanky enough.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that one.
Yes.
I mean, I could, just for the sake of disagreeing. But no, you're right. It's the kind of thing where Taiki does have a lot of damage. You've always got to keep track of an Evelyn. I keep wanting to say Elise the entire time. Evelyn does have significant amount of damage, even early games, so you just kind of hammer that Q and see what can be done. But then I honestly feel like Sartorius and Kyrie probably just had the stronger setup for the 2v2.
Well, it's Kyrie that's having some technical problems at the moment, has paused. I believe he had a PC crash, so just needs to reboot and get back into the game. As soon as we hear an update from production, I'll let you know. just to circle back, Forge come out the gate slow. Their lane swap falls a little behind. They didn't have the tower pushing pressure to equalize towers.
Yeah.
But it's the small things that then impact later. And now we need to see whether or not Epsilon are of a caliber to punish those mistakes, allow Sartorius to get ahead, etc.
There is the other side, though, of the 2v2, where now Epsilon, because they've gone bottom lane and Forge are calling them into a 2v2, now Epsilon are pushed out bottom without a tower, too. So they have to play this a little carefully. Again, it's on where Taiki goes. And the thing about playing against an Evelyn that everybody forgets is you need to change your warding pattern.
Yeah.
Warding in the lane entrances, the river entrances doesn't cut it. Yes, you can pink ward, but she'll just kill it and come back. You have to ward on the jungle camps. That's always why Evelyn comes back out and has this stint of being good in professional play, because everybody, quite frankly, just forgets.
Yeah, it's a completely different play style. And especially at this kind of level of play, you always hear the competitors, the players talking about how you never know if Evelyn's there.
Yeah.
Unless you have warded every camp, you don't know for sure where Evelyn's going to be. And that doubt can influence your entire play. So with a little bit of luck, the PC problems have been resolved, and we have unpaused. So welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Catching a glimpse of CosQ. He was actually trading very heavily with Ica during the opening levels. Not resulted into any sort of control just yet. There we go. There's the disconnect and a reconnect. We'll jump back in shortly.
Yes, that was the issue. So Taiki's now bottom side. He even just headbutted Woolite back, but it's going to take way more damage than he was bargaining for in that trade. Mid laners both recalled at the same time, but Kyrie was spotted out in mid lane just a few seconds before that, so that's where they knew the opening was for that bottom lane, but just a little bit of a misplay by Hiva.
All right, Taiki snuck his way into the bush. I do not believe he's been spotted. Has been in the shadows since he moved up. Looking at the minimap, Ocean Drake is the first on the board, so not going to be the most aggressive. And there's two pinks in the river already. So as far as Epsilon are concerned, I think a little bit of praise to some of the vision, but it's simply not deep enough.
It's simply not deep enough. A little unfortunate for Epsilon that Kyrie is on the bottom side of the map. There's the show from... Oh, in fact, no, it's Evelyn, so Taiki didn't show yet.
Yeah.
I got to get used to that one.
Spent a lot of time there.
Yeah, it did spend a lot of time, but Mimic isn't getting punished for pushing up. He's getting punished in CS, but he's not getting picked off, which means he's getting at least experience in this setup. The problem is Sartorius is almost a whole level ahead for now. Kyrie wants the same performance. Paths out of the vision on that pink ward. We saw the same play coming in game one.
Slide and glide, no tag for the Emperor's Divide, and Kyrie just has to walk past, waving. No, not even a love tap auto attack.
Got the flash, and that's the important thing from that scenario. Kyrie is on the top side now, which means Mimic will play this a lot safer. Does get himself a pink ward and will drop his ward in the bush, or at least in the river at the same time, just to try and deny some of the lane entrance here. In fact, he wards that bush, and it's got a pink ward in it as well, but Mimic is not safe enough to be able to take it out on his own, I don't believe. No. He's going to try. Nobody can punish him for now. So his thought process, though, would be if there was a jungler there. Evelyn wasn't quite close enough, but they managed to close some of the gap.
Yeah, but the gap that is not closing, Mimic CS. Down nearly 30, down 2 full levels because of his little jaunt through the river. And Taiki's not even coming to the top lane to help out. Actual fact, recalling from the Gromp, but luckily for Mimic, there is a wave pushing into him.
Unluckily for Mimic, Kyrie wants to come topside as well, and that pink ward may not save him. The fortunate thing for him is that wave is now pushing towards him. Rift Spirit is there and has spotted Kyrie as well, so that was good cover from Taiki to know that they could spot Kyrie coming through the top side.
And this entire lead that Sartorius has built up is because of how far behind Forge was in the lane swap.
Yeah.
Sartorius shoved that wave in. He allowed the minions to bounce back towards the Epsilon side of the jungle. Sartorius was there to already, catch it with waiting arms. And has earned himself a very, very big lead. That wave will once again bounce back to Sartorius, and I think he can extend that lead even more.
And that was the knock-on effect, really, is that Sartorius, if it had been the duo lane coming topside, then doesn't punish quite as hard. It means they have a few fewer minions in the wave as they push into the turret, but it does punish Mimic because of the way it then ended up pushing back towards them. So it would have meant that either Forge would have had to have rushed things through to try and get the tower push and maybe ended up failing it once again, or Epsilon can punish the solo lane.
And I also wonder what the knock-on effect... Oh, Blue Buff could get stolen away. He's going to grab
Physically
that.
steals it away.
Oh, that was fantastic. I love watching that force of will. Was it smited by Taiki in the end?
Yes, it was thrown over to Taiki, and then Taiki smited away.
Oh, I really like seeing a play like that happen, using the full skill set. But I know I'm really harping on about this Mimic Sartorius matchup, but the fact that Mimic is so far behind, he's also going to be dissuaded from teleporting or using Stand United. Because if he does that, he's in trouble. I can remember has no flash available. Stand United is being channeled. It will complete. The taunt comes under the tower, and Kyrie's taken down for first blood. There is an instant reply before the Dragon's picked up by Forge, but it's a 1-for-2.
Massive turnaround. Here comes the second engage.
Oh, we're not done yet. Noxiac gets eaten up. Forge grabbed themselves 3 kills.
It looked like in that scenario that we saw the disconnect on Kyrie come through there as well. I believe it was right as they were engaging that play. So when we take another look at it, we can see the actual impact from it. At least for the beginning of the play, Kyrie was there, and then the turnaround came from Forge. So it looked to be a good turnaround as Forge were going aggressive. There's Sartorius pushing through in the top side.
Yeah, he is. Unfortunately, guys, we do have another pause. It is once again the PC crash, so we will take a look into that matter and keep you updated if the problems continue to persist, what the next steps will be. Mimic arrived just in the nick of time to get that Shadow Dash down.
Yeah, he did. The only thing is we've got to kind of now diagnose the rest of that fight, right? Because it looks like there were issues at the same time. So on a first look through, it's like, man, that's such a good timing for the Shen to come through. So
I think we have that replay. If it is ready, let's pull that one up on screens and take a look at the first blood. Because it initially looked really good from CosQ.
Yeah, initially CosQ goes in, and obviously we can see Kyrie is still participating in this as CosQ goes aggressive. So Kyrie's still managing to get through, actually flashes forward, and it looks like at that point he was taunted under the turret. And I wouldn't go so far as to say that there was no way out, but he had just used his flash in that scenario. So the taunt is fairly significant there afterwards. So certainly the flash forward from Kyrie kind of puts him in a bad position, and then bad timing at the same time. Unfortunately, we do play online here for Challenger Series, which means that it's not quite as a controlled environment as the LCS. So sometimes these issues do crop up, but hopefully it can be rectified in this scenario, and hopefully we can get ourselves back into the game.
Yes, that's what we're hoping for. And for Forge, they fall behind in the lane swap, but this time round, they are the ones that came away with 3 kills. They also got the first dragon. So Epsilon had all of these good things going for them, and then Forge just started to, play Jenga with the baseline of Epsilon, knock over all their objectives in a very quick succession of time.
Yes, that kind of is looking at how this game could end up going from this. Forge picking up a lot from that. It's only 200 gold lead, though, in this game right now. And it's a tough situation to be in for Epsilon, because now they're in this composition where they want the Azir, they've got the Caitlyn, they're waiting somewhat for some extra time in these exchanges. But if these fights keep going over to Forge for now, it makes it very, very tough for this kind of composition to hold on. Yeah,
it'll be even more difficult if Epsilon are unable to resolve the problems. I've just heard from our production team and from the league operator or league ops guys that in about 3 to 4 minutes time, the allotted pause time will run out, and we will continue the game in a 5 versus 4 scenario if the technical issues cannot be resolved. So a few minutes left to see if we can get that working. And either way, we'll be jumping back into the game shortly. But I want to go back to that initial first play. CosQ, he did the Emperor's Divide play that got flash. Then he did a repeat gank with support from the rest of the team. This is a little bit more of the CosQ I was expecting to see.
Yeah, it is a little bit more. And, we've seen different shades of CosQ, different times. generally, recent times, he's been a little quieter than we've perhaps come to expect from his first couple of seasons when Pulse and I were casting, I think it was like last year spring, last year summer. It was like, man, Cosq is going so aggressive in all situations when he was playing on Lowland Lions, at least at the time. Long time back, we were like, man, this guy is one that we really have to look at as a contender.
Yeah, and the meta is just so different as well now, isn't it?
Yeah.
The control mages are so much more the default. Taking a look at the minimap, it appears that everybody is connected for the time being. Let's hope that that is the state that continues.
Yes. Also, let's hope we don't have any more unfortunately timed DCs either. I'm sure somebody will break that down second by second. Cocoon lands onto Ica at this point. And we resume. We resume with Forge with a slight lead.
Yeah, slightly thanks to the kills and the dragon. But look at those CS differences. Minus 40 in the top lane, plus 20 in the mid lane. Here's the gold differences.
Yep.
Only 200 separating really everybody. It looks a lot closer, actually, when you look at gold in contrast to CS.
Yeah, and a lot of it is because just from that fight, Mimic did just pick up 2 kills. Hiva also got a kill as well in the duration. Ooh, look at the damage you can see come out of Jhin. Always get surprised by it, despite the fact we know the damage.
Kyrie just body blocks everything. A true bro for Woolites, but it might not be enough. Agony's Embrace, Agony's Embrace, Agony's Embrace. 1 second! Taiki gets a chilling smite before he runs away. Oh, he didn't use the ulti.
He didn't. That makes you feel pretty silly in that scenario,
I really wanted
doesn't
it to happen. It was just, was it just the E, I think? It was just the Ravage,
yeah, he just smite him and then Q him and instantly Woolite flashed away.
Oh.
So...
it's the little things. You have to enjoy these moments.
You do. It's like your Rex say, dum, 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 dum,
yes,
dum.
Land Shark.
Land Shark. There's... No, I was trying to come up with a Lone Shark joke, but I haven't got one here.
So you're 0 for 2.
Yeah, I know. I'm really bad on these today. I don't know what it is. As you said, I'm wondering what is going to be like Game 6. It's just going to be incoherent drivel.
Yep.
In this game.
I have a different outfit for each series as well. Well, a different jacket at least. So.
Oh, you spoiled the...
it's not a surprise. I'm building hype.
You're building
hype.
You're building hype for the jackets?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Although I don't know how I'm going to top this purple one.
Yeah, you started at the wrong end of that, didn't you? You started at the crazy end.
I get progressively more boring as the day goes on. In terms of my outfits. Hopefully. Not my commentary.
Yeah, hopefully not the casts, but who knows?
Yeah, we'll find out shortly. But now that we are in game and everyone has not disconnected for a while, I think I'll decide to jump back into this. A little bit of pressure being set up in this middle lane. Epsilon grouping up. Ica has flash available though and is under his tower, so no real engaged threat. And the game is completely even, thanks to the kills on Forge side.
Yes, the game is pretty much even, but for Forge, they've got Ica on this Syndra. We actually saw Syndra come out for Power of Evil in EU LCS just last week. Ace in the Hole comes out. A little bit of damage is all. Ica should be able to push this back. We saw Power of Evil running the teleport, which actually meant he had like no kill pressure on anyone. Ica's running the Ignite. We've seen this from him in solo queue very recently. A lot of Syndra. More aggressive Ica. Leaner, faster, more aggressive than we've seen before.
And, a little bit more outspoken as well on Twitter, actually, talking about the plays. And now we're going to see whether or not it will work. Agony's Embrace comes down from Taiki. Not to the most fanfare, though. Double knockup. Hiva's found 2. Woolite's in trouble. It's high noon as Gap takes him down with the 3rd shot. Epsilon lose 1, and Forge turn their attention to the mid tower.
Yeah, it looks like Epsilon were backing away from another disconnect as well, so they couldn't continue that fight. TP went up top side from Mimic to hold that top wave as well. Look where Hiva is in the enemy jungle. Very aggressively poised. They've caught Noxiac.
Yeah, they have, but he manages to walk away. The fact that Kyrie's firing out that cocoon means that the that was just the notification of disconnect.
Yes.
I believe he was reconnected. So the pause timer not as impactful.
Yeah, again, for anybody that did just join us, we do run on a delay, which means that the actual disconnects for us aren't felt, but in the game was a disconnect at that point.
Yes.
So it's time travel.
Time travel. As I've said, players are in the future. but they can't tell you the lottery numbers because they're focusing on the game.
Somebody, I saw a shower thoughts thread that was just like, the lottery is just one big honey trap to catch time travelers.
Oh, interesting.
Which I thought was like an interesting prospect in that scenario. So we'll see whether Epsilon and Forge actually get caught on their time travel duties. But Sartorius wants to go aggressive.
Okay, one for two. So you got one good one, two bad ones. I'm keeping track of your joke meter.
You call that one a good one?
That was pretty good.
Man, the level of my jokes must be awful on a regular
that.
basis.
I was setting my expectations low. I can never be disappointed. Unfortunately,
I've heard that a lot in my life, unfortunately.
We do have another brief pause, hence the Tide Tribes and side stories. The game is very even for different scenarios, but while the players are trying to sort their technical stories out, do you think Epsilon have what it takes to 2-0 for the first time in summer?
If their connections persist, perhaps. If they can turn this around. The problem is we're going to take a look at one of the replays. Stop laughing. Because there's the Karma being caught out there. Noxiac got caught out in the bottom side, so we wanted to take another look just at this. This was the beginning of the play that eventually Kyrie ended up DCing from earlier. So this is just them kind of getting Woolite. Curtain Call comes out. Whole lot of damage, and this is the long-range composition coming out from Forge.
Also, I think that the damage tick was actually from the captive audience trap, not from the shot.
It also could have been the Deathfire touch.
Okay, maybe. Either way,
most likely.
Noxiac dies.
I mean, that's the whole reason you take
okay, I'm hearing from production. We're going to verify this in slow-mo, potentially. Okay, so we can see exactly what killed Noxiac.
We can see.
Yes. I hope
it's Deathfire touch
I'm calling it captive audience. That's what I think. If production has the replay ready, pull this up.
Apparently it's ready.
Pull this up. Let's take a look in slow-mo. What is the damage tick?
I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning. Okay.
Okay, so we're following Woolite now. 1 shot. 2 shots. Okay. I think you're right.
I think so.
I think you're right. It's just a death animation explosion. It kind of looked like a captive audience. Somewhere Pulse is yelling at us again. Yeah.
My favorite was when Pulse and I forgot what the Jin's on for, like his 4th shot, because there's that like high noon sound where it's like, the and it just hovers in the background. Somebody we were like, I don't know what that is. I think that's a bug. And someone was like, no, that's Jin. I was like, oh, okay. We don't see this champion enough.
Don't play enough Jin.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Exactly. Well, we normally play with Divisio, and he's off the Jin hype train now. He's on to Twitch because his Jin was awful.
Yeah, his Twitch is not much better. It's really, really not. I believe we're hearing from production that we should hopefully be getting the game underway shortly. As mentioned, if the allotted time has been maxed out, which I believe it now has, teams will be forced to play 4 versus 5 until they can get their disconnected member back into the game. Hopefully, we can resolve the problems, because a 5 versus 4 is not something that really anybody wants to play or work with.
One thing I will say on that end is it used to be that that was kind of just it.
Yeah.
So a lot of teams talk about the option at least, and waiting for the reconnect. So hopefully we will have that resolved. It is less than ideal situation, as Forge going to take themselves a Mountain Drake in exchange for the Na getting Rift Herald. So for Sartorius, he now has that glimpse of the void, which can be used to great effect on Na. Mini Na kind of just bullies people around, which is ironic. In Mini Na, at least.
Well, I think if anybody's throwing stones at you, regardless of their size, it makes them a good bully.
Have you seen the film Zootopia?
Not yet. I really want to. I really want to. The sloth trailer had me in hysterical laughter.
That killed me, but it was more that there's a character there that actually I figure is more of akin to the bully that Mininar is. So.
Okay. I will watch it, and next time
we cast, we'll
when we get to playoffs. When we get to playoffs to Challenger, and we're back in the same broadcast in this environment, I think.
Okay. Sounds good. I'll make a date. It'll go in my planner.
Oh, that's so cute. Now that that's done. Yeah, now that that's done. All right, so 17.5 minutes in, even in gold. Forge have got themselves 2 dragons, an ocean and a mountain, and 3 additional kills, which is allowing Mimic to stay a little bit more relevant, a little bit more even. 600 gold down, despite being 50 CS down. And all of that stems from the lane swap, in which Epsilon actually played very well.
Yeah, so Epsilon, they have maintained a slight lead for now, at least, or at least regained it. Kyrie did just get stunned up by Ica. Taiki wants mid lane. Oh, submarine!
It's the submarine! It's not yellow, but it doesn't need to be. Emperor's Divide knocks everyone from Forge away as the force of will throws a minion at a Noxiac or a Dark Sphere, ending up in the kill. Submarine number 1, success.
Yeah, they put the periscope up. Sonar was active and got the first kill in that little exchange. They traded it for a tower, though. Sartorius managed to get one over in the top side. Clearly didn't have the sonar in effect on that one.
No, he did not. Oh, another engaged Taiki. He's got no Shen to back him up this time round. They've traded 1 for 1. Kozku flies all the way forward, and the 4th shot goes just wide. Barry doesn't die. Now Ika's in trouble, forced to flash away from the Sand Soldiers. His Gap is unable to pick up the root of the Deadly Flourish, and Kozku escapes. A little bit of a messy outro. 1 for 2 in favor of Epsilon.
Yeah, Epsilon managing to pick up 2 from that is a fairly important turnaround here because they want to push up mid lane. They have a Mininar here. That will be enough to push. Remember, Azir's Arise does not affect turrets anymore. Mimic kind of just walks in there. I think he was either was DC'd or was faking a DC at that point, and Epsilon let him off with it.
One of the two. Slightly awkward, means Epsilon don't get the tower. And here's a replay. So this was the initial submarine.
Yeah. Well, as you said, they're all living in it at this point. Epsilon go aggressive. I mean, at that point, Kozku is able to disengage fairly effectively, and that kind of spells the end of the initial part of this fight. So we look forward now to the curtain call being used through the side of the jungle here. But again, it's Hiva that's being aggressive. This is what we know from Hiva time and time again. Instead of backing himself away, he goes aggressive onto Woolite and comes away with a kill for his team, going over to Ica onto Woolite. So Hiva, that's the kind of player he is. He's always going to be aggressive, always going to go forward for a pick like that. And from there, everybody else gets away.
So it's exciting to watch, but slightly messy at times.
Slightly, yeah. Just a little.
And that allows Epsilon to maintain a modicum of a lead as far as the gold is concerned. But not much else. Looking through the itemization, everybody's still scaling. Spectre's Cowl for Sartorius, Stinger for Kozku, Eye-Edge getting closer there for Woolite, and Gap got himself the Ghostblade, but nowhere near his final form when it comes to Jhin and damage.
No, that's for sure. Ooh, Kozku stunned up.
That was a fantastic stun. One more shot comes out, and Ica picks up the kill. Very well comboed between the two of them.
Yeah, the long-range combo, catching him. It's difficult to avoid at that point because you've got so many things that can then activate the Jhin W.
Oh, we're not done yet, though. There's more shenanigans. Here comes Hiva! He goes for the headbutt, pulverize. I believe still got the Unbreakable Will. Not going to need it just yet. Scatter the weak from Ica is going to slow everyone from Epsilon away. And that will allow the tower to go down. So it's 2 towers to 2.
Ooh, Mimic takes the clock there. The clock tower. It's made a pretty satisfying noise as that hit as well.
Dong!
I wasn't going to maybe set that one up, but this was the setup that came from Ica. Again, just unleashed power all over Kozku at that point. Locks him down.
Good movement speed there from Woolite. Good movement speed, silly thing to say. He's able to run away.
Hey, it's better movement speed than Cloud Drake gives you right now.
Low blow. Low blow. Cloud Drake can't defend itself.
Look, there's a reason Daenerys doesn't have one that looks like Cloud Drake, okay?
That's true. We haven't seen the other two, though. Like, we've only seen the big guy, the oldest one, or whatever. Because the other two dragons, like, they're just I'm gonna stop the spoilers.
Please, yeah, just
I realized I got
there's
halfway.
no way I can bail out of this without being like Trevor. Either,
got halfway,
either
we're
I'm
done.
like yes, and somebody's gonna tweet me, and
No, we're done. We're done with that one. But Epsilon, they're not done with the dragon. This is not Daenerys' one, so it should go down easily. There's an Ocean Drake, and I believe a team fight's gonna break out. We all live in a Taiki submarine. He gets rooted against the wall, stunned up, killed. Sartorius takes him down. A 3-man knockup from Hiva. They'll allow a kill onto Woolite as Epsilon are running for their lives. Mimic has a flash available, taunt up in a few seconds. Not gonna flash just yet. Kosku's the target. He manages to catch a wall before Hiva flashes forward. Headbutts Epsilon backwards. The fight is still not done. Sartorius throws out the boomerang. They trade 1 for 2, but Epsilon got dragon.
1 for 2, very messy, very extended fight there as well. It was only an ocean dragon though. We've had 2 oceans and a mountain, so for now, that's you know, Epsilon will take that, but they did give away an extra kill for it. Been a much messier game than our previous one. So this is Epsilon going for the dragon. They already had it before the submarine play comes through. Good throwback, actually denies a lot of Taiki's damage there, but Gap, whew,
Oh, good shot.
just got him.
Like
with it.
Angelina Jolie, he just curved that bullet. No, too far? Okay.
No, that's Wanted, right?
Yeah,
I wanted to see that film, pun intended, but then ended up I just couldn't. I can't remember why. But the rest of this fight was very extended, and it just. I mean, it's messy. Hiva didn't even die, though. That's one of the key things. There was a couple of picks there that
You
could
almost
have
sound
continued.
disappointed.
I know. It's because I thought about Wanted for a second and then realized I hadn't seen the movie, and I keep making references to it.
It's not fair, dude.
I know.
You don't have permission to.
I don't have permission.
Unless you've watched it, you can't reference it.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah. I don't really know where I'm going with that. Like, I'm scolding you for making like a reference to maybe 12 years
Dad
old.
Trevor.
Yeah, I know.
You've
Of all
taken
the things to do
mantle.
it, of all the things that triggers it, referencing like a pretty mediocre film. that's what started it.
Taiki is Woolite found Taiki in this situation. Like, I'll play by play this.
Look
Whoa,
at that! Flash over, Woolite's in trouble. Ica unleashes power all over Woolite's face and takes him down. Woolite, a little too eager, maybe.
Very eager at that point, but Taiki turns around, goes from getting hit by Caitlyn with headshots into I'm going to flash on you, and then Agony's embrace and everything, and kind of hugs him to death at that point, and Woolite ends up falling over.
Now, that is what I was expecting from Forge in Game 1.
Oh, okay.
That was the style that I thought Forge were going to play, and instead they had that passive approach, which I honestly played into Epsilon's hands. Yeah, that's in Game 1 of the series.
In Game 1 of the series, and that's the weird thing is sometimes we just see Forge play this hyper-aggressive style where they've got the likes of an Alistair, you know, these kind of picks. I wouldn't really have expected it from Taiki on Evelyn on her own, but, I mean, whatever works for you. Sartorius now still, remember, he has that damage reduction coming from Rift Herald buff, and Mimic is getting pushed into the tower, but there's an Evelyn here.
All right, let's take a look. Agony's Embrace not available, and Mega Gnar's about to proc, so Taiki doesn't really want to pick this fight. Sartorius will just headbutt the tower to death. And that will be the 4th tower of the game in favor of Epsilon. Keeps the gold even, 26 minutes in. I believe you will notice, there we go. So Kyrie has now disconnected. So as mentioned, the players are in the future, so when they have technical issues, they pause. Ooh. Woolite takes a lot of damage from Ica. I believe Kyrie does reconnect in just a few minutes' time. So for the moment, it's all about defending with this 4-man squad.
Yeah, that is going to be fairly tough for Epsilon. I mean, it is an even game for now. But that is sure to change here. Look at how low Noxiac is into the curtain call.
Well, first 2 shots go wide. 3rd tags Kosku. The 4th almost takes down Noxiac. Deadly Flourish is shielded and actually manages to save Noxiac's life, I believe. And the tower still stands. Forge unable to knock it down.
Forge unable for now, and that's actually going to result in them backing away, having to reset here, and that gives Kyrie the extra time, perhaps, to get himself back in, and is a bit of respite for Epsilon. It is a minor sense of relief, though, for a second. It's Infernal is the next dragon, up in 1 minute 26, so that's an important one. If that one now goes over to Forge, that would give them a fairly significant boost. And if Epsilon don't really have everybody there to fight it, and there's not really too many ways that they can contest, but there is the reconnect.
And the thing is, even if Epsilon have everyone there to fight it, all that's going to happen is Heaver's going to flash engage, just like he's going to do right now. Noxiax down. Protobelt forward from Taiki on Evelyn, I might add. And he's able to scare the rest of Epsilon away. High heels and that belt, and Taiki is ripping Epsilon apart.
Well, what they've said is we don't care about the Infernal Dragon, we want the Baron at this point. Forge, they aren't the tankiest bunch here, but there's Heaver coming in to tank it up.
This is so scary.
Woolite's here. Oh no, Forge.
Heaver's gone forward again. Woolite's been knocked backwards. Manages to take down Heaver in the process as Gap fires the curtain call. Not going to be able to do more. They trade ADC for support. Crucially, they stop the Baron.
They stop the Baron. You can see the Baron, massive amounts of regen ticking up at the end. So this was the pick that almost resulted in Forge getting themselves a Baron, but fairly straightforward, fairly simple as we fly our way through to the Baron attempt here from Forge. I mean, they would have got this with Heaver tanking it up as well, fairly easily, but look, Woolite puts down the 2 traps initially to try and deter, but it's not quite enough to stop Heaver going in. Heaver trades for Woolite, but they stop themselves, well, they stop the Baron from Forge getting it.
And that's very crucial, actually, because Epsilon, of course, have maintained an even game. It's been crazy. It's been very bloody, in fact, with lots of kills back and forth. And Epsilon have been on the receiving end. They've not been able to, play aggressive or play proactive, really.
Yeah, I kind of got to be honest, a lot of it is because of these disconnects are very disruptive to the flow for Epsilon. It's tough to maintain control, especially around objectives, that kind of thing, which are on a constant timer, that if you don't have everybody in, it's tough to actually control vision, control the flow of the game around it. So I can't blame them too heavily for that. It's somewhat unfortunate for them for this game.
Oh, beyond a shadow. And it's just, it is very tough. Especially for Epsilon, who, if they had picked up another win here, they could have kept their playoff hopes a lot more alive.
Yeah.
Sitting on 1 point at the moment, Forge sitting on 3. So if they split the series, it goes to 4 points into 2, whereas Epsilon could have overtaken Forge, Curry's still disconnected for now.
Would have left a point buffer between themselves and Forge. If this does go to a tied series, it means Epsilon would have to win next week 2-0 over, I believe it's Nerve that they play, and Forge would have to lose 0-2.
The real question is, who does Forge play next week? Shall we double check that?
You can double check that.
I will do just that. Forge plays Huma.
Potentially tough matchup. Huma, when they're on form, tend to be fairly strong. Woolite manages to dodge out 3.
Very, very, very good mechanics. Sidesteps those Dark Spheres, doesn't get Ica's balls in his face, and survives. Been waiting all game for an opportunity.
We'll see if he ends it with an ace in his hole.
Woolite's in trouble, and no, won't be able to. Ica really wanted to share that moment with Woolite. And Woolite now opens up the base. Ica and the rest of Forge, they're looking to the mid-inner turret.
They're looking for it. They're also setting up a bush trap play. Ica, of course, can stun people from long range. This is what this composition is kind of made to do for Forge. Hide around corners and then hit someone with that scatter the weak. See how weak they truly are.
Yeah.
Test their might.
Sounds like a terrible action movie.
It was a terrible action movie. It was called Mortal Kombat, based on the game. It was awful.
All right, Baron has been started by Forge. We'll continue this discussion throughout the day, as I remember elements of Mortal Kombat. Baron goes down to 2,000 hit points. Epsilon are way too late for this. Unfortunately, Kyrie is disconnected. Curtain call. 1, 2, 3. Number 4 might not going to be enough.
Should have held it.
Yeah. Shots from Gap. Going a little wide, actually, most of the time. Although Noxiac has got a movement speed increase ability, so that makes his life a lot easier.
Gap's now got himself the Dusk Blade of Drakthar.
I love that name.
Yeah. Someone was playing a lot of Dungeons and Dragons.
Do you like it as a third item?
So, I mean, I don't mind it. We've just seen it on the Jhin time and time again. Basically, the thing is, Jin's not an AD carry that accidentally auto-attacks the champion. He only ever auto-attacks him if he needs to kill them, which sounds like a weird thing, but there are a lot of AD carries that will just throw out attacks and it doesn't matter who they hit. Jhin tends to be all-inning someone if he's in auto-attack range, so that's why you don't end up accidentally using that kind of passive. I mean, if you put Duskblade on a Sivir, I'd say you're insane, because you just want to auto-attack anything.
I concur. Oh, good damage from CosQ. And Kyrie has reconnected, taking stock 1 level down, 111 CS to 121. Taiki has got an Hourglass to back up the Proto Belt. And now Epsilon have to defend.
So even despite everything, Sartorius is Flame Horizoning Mimic right now in that top lane. And a lot of it is because of that Rift Herald buff that he got earlier. It's already a decent matchup for him, the Na into the Shen when it comes to pushing in the solo lane. But now he's just compounded that and given himself a massive lead in the 1v1.
The matchup was favorable. Then the lane swap was favorable to Sartorius. And then he got Glimpse of the Void. So like everything that Sartorius wanted to win against his opposite number has been there. Dark Spheres, they get thrown down. Gap lines up the curtain call. First shot blocked by the QSS. Banshee's Veil. And Gap is not going to fire off or find any more targets. Baron-empowered cannon minions knocking on Epsilon's door. And Kyrie is backing to the fountain. I'm hoping that's to shop. Yes, still moving around. So all 5 members of Epsilon are still available. And now they are playing in super hard mode.
Yeah, this is real tough. Still a third of the Baron buff is left on Forge, who are looking to push forward now as well. Man, Forge have built themselves up such a lead in this game. Some of the fights have been fortunate, some of them have been hard work by Forge at the same time.
5,500 gold. 3 dragons to 1. They've got an additional mountain and infernal over the ocean. And in 30 seconds time, dragon spawns, which means it will be Elder. It is after the 35-minute mark, and that should allow Forge to back away. I think that's very impactful for them, actually. The mountain plus infernal. All right, Mimic. I think you're going to get Goomba stomped by a terrifying Mega Gnar. Crunch comes down. Wallop should be available. That holds Mimic against the wall. Gnar him! Gnar him!
Nope. He does so little damage in Mega Gnar compared to in his Mini Gnar form, where he has hyper procs and all that kind of thing. And his Glimpse of the Void is actually about to run out for Sartorius. It is about that time where 20 minutes will have expired. And I think there might be just under a minute left on it. And Sartorius will still have the advantage in the 1 versus 1, but without the damage reduction, without the added damage, it won't quite be as significant as we've seen with Sartorius pushing.
So Mimic will be able to survive a little while longer, but not much else.
Yeah, not much longer.
And Epsilon, they simply can't contest this.
No.
Unfortunately, the connection-related problems has allowed Forge now to grab themselves the Elder Dragon. And let's see, is Leonidas with Epsilon? Can they hold? Can CosQ's Phalanx defense keep Forge out? Because you cannot deny the fact that Sartorius is keeping Mimic busy, is maintaining pressure somewhere on the map that Forge have just elected not to deal with.
Yeah, they've just said, okay, Mimic, well, you're not losing this too hard. You're not losing us turrets. It's not crippling us. The one thing, though, for Epsilon is they're going to try and get a flank if they can, but there's no good wards.
Noxiac's going to flash away. Oh, the shot gets him. CosQ didn't tank it. Mimic taunts and flashes after. Woolite's locked down. He follows shortly thereafter. Epsilon have lost 2. The base is open. Heaver catches out CosQ, and Forge turn their attention to the inhibitor. One last fight opens up the base. Forge now start focusing down the Nexus. It is a tough, tough loss for Epsilon, considering the technical problems. But unfortunately for them, Forge will be on the Nexus. Just a few more kills before they ace out Epsilon.
Yeah, they threaded the needle on that last hit through the fight, but Forge were pushing in already to try and close this out. They had the Elder Drake for themselves. And that is going to be the win for Forge, coming out to even this series at 1-1.
1-1. Forge grab themselves a point, keep their playoff hopes alive. And that's just heartbreaking. Heartbreaking for Epsilon. They were looking much better than I had anticipated. And unfortunately for them, the technical problems causing the headaches.
Yeah, I mean, we look at the beginning of the game, and it's tough without breaking down that play kind of frame by frame and figuring out where the disconnect actually comes through in the mid lane. What it looked like, at least in the replay that we saw, is that the flash forward from Kyrie was then followed up by a taunt, and somewhere in that kind of split second, there was a disconnect. So it looked like in that point, it kind of already gone towards, you know, Shen picking up the kill. It's very tough, though, because obviously we don't have full context on the exact point at which, so it does kind of mar the play slightly.
It does a little bit. But what isn't marred, Hiva's Alistair continues to be borderline reckless. Because some of those engages are phenomenal, and Hiva seems to find great pulverizers time and time again. But how on earth does he get away unpunished for some of those engages? Because it is really, really close to being a bad engage.
Yeah, well, a couple of times that is the case, but he's always on the aggressive foot, always trying to put that front foot forward and you know, go forward and always flash in, get the knockups, and then the rest of his team he kind of relies on to just follow up. And that's one of the reasons is generally he's aggressive around his team. He's not just aggressive for the sake of being aggressive.
Nonchalant, yeah. What did you think of Tyke's Evelyn?
I don't think the Evelyn necessarily won or lost them the game. I think that could have been a Rek'Sai, and I think the result would have been the same in this scenario. I don't think you were looking at like the submarine plays as being pivotal. Like, yes, the fights were, but I don't think it was because of Evelyn, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I like the submarine plays.
Yeah, I do as well.
They were well executed.
And you get to say crazy stuff about them.
Yes.
So.
And it was also interesting just to see how different Forge can play. It feels like they stalled out in game one, didn't have that aggressive play, but managed to make it towards the end. Talking about some of those aggressive plays, I believe we do have a replay of one of those last team fights where Jin or Gap was able to find some good target selection and basically just using Curtain Call on cooldown.
Oh, look at it. They all don't close the gap. And at that point, that last hit through. I mean, Forge, look at how far ahead they are when it comes to the health bars already for this fight. Save for CosQ going huge, but it's Hiva once again under the turret, going aggressive, stopping the Azir from coming back out. And Forge right now, this is them. They've already won the game already after the first pick.
Also, moments before that, we were just talking about how Forge had somewhat given up side lane control to Sartorius. You can do that when you know you're going to dive. You can do that when you know, hey, the objective is the tower. When the minion line gets there, just throw everything in the kitchen sink at Epsilon. And because they have one less guy to try and juggle and catch, because Sartorius was playing aggro, it just allowed Forge to break open the base and break open that game.
Yeah, it allowed them to. I just feel for Forge, the first game was a weird one because I look back at it and, you know, Forge, I don't think they were anticipating like the Cassiopeia Ashe composition that was played by Epsilon. They picked that in the last rotation, and then Forge were like, oh, well, I guess we can kind of team fight. The problem is they didn't have that engage potential to actually deny a lot of what Epsilon were doing. So it's a bit of a frustrating draft in game one and then a frustrating game in game two.
Yes, for completely different reasons. But, you know, to go back now to the Series 1 game where Forge... The one tower dive I think you nailed on the head, they went a bit aggressive, they tried to get CosQ, and it backfires. I think a little bit of praise for the attempt. You know, find a good stun, they just didn't have the damage, so that's a little bit of a misread in the situation. But they shouldn't have fallen prey to so many Ashe arrows.
Yeah.
Like, Woolite constantly just found Hiva over and over and over. it just didn't feel like there was deep enough vision to deal with that or be aware of the risks.
Then they ended up playing into the Cassiopeia in team fights as well. It's like, oh, let's go aggressive on the one champion that can stun 4 of us if we're looking at it. And that kind of happened a few too many times for my liking. But then it's tough. How do you engage in that scenario? Well, you've got to only engage. You've got to engage on the person you've got the crowd control on. Yes. And if that happens to be a Cassiopeia, then you hope you got to kill her first. But it just didn't always work out that way.
No, it really didn't. Another week of games for Ica, replacing Jizuki. Overall thoughts on Forge, because they do have this additional point. They are looking a little more likely to make playoffs. Got some room to improve some more games looking forward. I
feel like Ica is a bit of a different player now than what we saw in LCS, at least. Yeah. We're seeing a couple more aggressive picks. You know, in LCS he played some of the Morgana, the Lux, that kind of thing, when that was a bit more meta. So yeah. I like seeing the Syndra, that sort of pick coming from him. You know, we see the picks being set up, and I think it works well for Forge. We saw the Vel'Kars last week as well. So a lot of interesting things coming out of Ica.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how he continues to grow, because the Syndra play in this particular game was impressive. And that means that the series #1 is done. It is time for a short break. You guys get some drinks, get a snack. When we return, Misfits will take on Humor.